Welcome, Sam, to the Business Everyday Show. I am really excited to have you on the first ever episode. And today we're going to talk about your business. Now, unlike probably other guests that we're going to have in the future, I have known you for a long time. Since you were
High school, early high school.
early high school, and you have talked about this interest, this business, for a very long time, and you're probably one of the few who actually took that young person energy and did something.
Mm.
So I'm super excited about talking to you about actually what you're doing.
Yeah.
But can I get you to say who you are, kind of a little bit of your background, and then just go ahead and get started? Like, how did you get into this particular business endeavor?
Mm. Yeah. That's a great question first. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
I'm excited to be number one. It's a big deal. It's a big
Yes.
honor. It's a big well, yeah, I'm Samuel Murphy. I'm a filmmaker. I'm a dad. And that's kind of driven most of what I do now. But I make wedding films for the most part. I have a wedding film company called
Everlast Film Co.
Last Film Co. Yeah. Yep. And how I got into it was really just honestly pretty shallow. As a kid, I thought photography was really cool. Like my earliest kind of like core memory with it was like Tarzan. These people would like take these big old cameras out there and be in the mid 20th century get up.
Mm-hmm.
I just was like, that's really cool. Like they get to go around and take pictures. And then that was kind of like the earliest start of it. And then it kind of grew over time, and I learned more about photography and just stuff. I fell in love with like color and light and composition.
I remember you just always had a camera,
Yeah,
just always taking pictures.
yeah. I mean, that's how you get the reps in, right?
Right.
You just learn to see the world a little bit differently. Um, and so it's kind of just grown from there. Like you said, I had this kind of interest in this drive or um, idea to kind of start something in high school. Most of it came from just like the rise of Instagram, and it kind of be early in the probably like mid 2010s. It became like a thing to be a wedding videographer, photographer,
Hmm.
kind of like classic warm oversat or really warm and orange and desaturated greens. Like it had a certain look that I just was like, that's really cool.
That is what is
Yeah,
wedding photography.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
sexy, it's cool, you know what I mean? And so I saw it, like I had the interest in the creative side and the color, light, and composition, but I also saw it as a viable business, right? Like it for me as a high schooler, it was like I don't need a lot of education. Get a camera, and it's more about building a portfolio and building the work rather than getting the doctor. So school really didn't interest me. Like going to college and that kind of thing didn't interest me. And so I was like, I'm just gonna go all in on photo and video and just see what goes. And so education wise, like I said, YouTube was everything.
YouTube University. I'm the same way.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Like the fact that you can pretty much learn anything from YouTube is astounding to me. And so I'm really grateful for that resource. Googling all the time, all the time. If there's like specific questions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, and then from there, I learned all the technical stuff and kind of figured out how that worked. And then I was doing other jobs. This was kind of like a side hobby up
Okay.
until early 2022. Beginning of 2022 is when I technically formed my LLC, I was doing construction, kind of just laboring, a little bit of foreman work. So I quit my job there, went full on into photography and videography. Really focusing on the video aspect because I really love it because you can communicate a moment so much more clearly. And you know the cheesy saying, like a picture, 1,000 words. Right. There's 24 pictures in a second of video.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So it just communicates and hits an emotional thing so much differently than photo does. And so, there is that. But then also, it's not as big. It's a much smaller niche, and the barrier to entry is much higher because you need to understand audio, you need to understand imaging, art side, but then you also need to understand the technical how things work. And so niche wise, you can, because it's a higher skill, you can make, so that kind of drew me as well. So it's not all noble and
Right. So you talk about like, you going from high school and then actually forming your LLC in two, which is a long time ago, and yet it's not. Like it, it depends how your 23 was. Mine, big story. Yeah, yeah. There's the allure of, hey, this is something that I want to do. I really don't want to go. I don't want to go to university. I don't want to college. I want to do all these other things. I want to pursue photography. Was it always the goal that it would become the full-time thing, or was it more the idea of like, no, I'm going to continue with the construction, and this is always just going to be the side thing that, it's the vacation money, it's the fun thing, it's the life-giving project that does pay for itself. So more than a hobby, but it's not my bread and butter every day.
Oh, I got you. No, from the get go, I knew that this is where I wanted to end up.
Okay.
I just the way I'm wired, I'm much more relational, and so I'd rather like have a small batch of clients that I work with one on one, and things, rather than kind of your hardcore video people who like want to build like this big agency and do all this stuff, and it seems more impersonal to me, and I know that's not always the case, but for me, I'd rather work with a small batch of folks that I really enjoy, and we can. So for me, weddings was the direction I wanted to go, and it's totally like financially, it's totally viable as a business and to provide for my family. It takes a few years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it takes a lot of best practicing, all the standard business practices of integrity and quality over the course of time. It can be something totally viable. But as of now, I'm actually interested in kind of diversifying some of the work that I do, realizing that if everything is dependent on me and I only have one main stream of income, what happens if I go?
What happens if that trigger finger has a spaz and you can't take the photos?
What happens if I break my leg because someone spilled, wine all over the floor at a wedding? Like those kinds of things. Like,
right.
So what's going to be my next step? Recently, I've like been reevaluating where I want to go, because this has honestly been my dream, like high school dream, like we mentioned earlier. I want to start a business, and I knew I wanted to live a pretty modest, simple life.
Okay.
So get married, some kids, buy a house, live happy. Like I'm more aiming for a quality of life. I want my business to support my quality of life rather than build something. That's not how I'm wired. Recently, I've just started like reevaluating where I want to go, because like I've kind of come to the end point of I'm where I wanted to be in high school. As we said earlier, I've reached my goal. I'm here. Now what? Right?
Now what?
So
Interesting.
Yeah. So I've kind of like hit that ceiling, which I thought would take a lot longer, honestly.
Right.
I thought it'd be, I'm 20, I'll be 24 this year. So I kind of thought I'd be later 30s, and, I kind of just thought things would be a little bit farther in the future. But now I'm here, and it's great. But like, where do I go from here? It doesn't feel like business wise there's anything really driving me like here now. And so at the beginning of 2024, I decided to do like a one-day mini retreat to just reevaluate where I want to go. What are the needs of my family, really? That's what like I said earlier, like that's what examining where we want to go, and then how do I make that happen.
Okay. So do you remember when you got your first actual paying client? That like, how did that come about? And you got to tell me, what was that like? Now, this wasn't, your friend. This wasn't maybe it would have been, but like, this was your first, like, in your head, your first legitimate client. And like, what did it take, and what was that like to experience going from, hey, this is something I could do, to, holy crap, I just made a sale. I did a job, and the client liked it, and they rewarded me with these, paper things. Like, this is incredible. I mean, I guess it's all,
It was
numbers and digits at this point.
I think it was a PayPal transfer.
Right. But do you remember that first client, and like how you got them, and what that was like, and even what job it was?
Yeah. No, it was a 2020 wedding. Yep. I was living in Kansas City, and we kind of talked about, we knew of each other. We weren't like close friends, but we knew of each other, and someone recommended me. And, I had my first kind of like consultation meeting.
Right.
And I like sat down with them and I was like, honestly, man, I just want to like make you guys look good, tell your story, and I want to understand you. So that's something that I feel like from the very beginning has been core value is like if I can understand who they are and empathize with them, I can use all the tools that video offers to create something that is encourage them and support them on this journey.
Right.
And so I was nervous. I was really nervous. Like like I mentioned earlier, I am relational, but I was also like an
We all were, right?
yeah, and
We're cut from the same cloth. Yikes. All right.
yeah. So there was a little bit of like those soft skills of communication, and I had to kind of overcome and just kind of man up. Let's do it. But
Look yourself in the mirror in the bathroom, like you can do this. You're amazing. You're a good communicator. You can do the sale. Yeah, I've been there.
Leave the sticky notes. Yep.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So it went really well. They were super chill. They were like, yeah, we really just want something to remember the day. And that leaves a lot of my worry, anxiety, and because it was my first paying gig, and so I was like, I want to provide something that's amazing and perfect, but amazing and perfect at my skill level was going to be like mediocre, and I had to just come to grips with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And for them, they loved it. After I delivered it and we went through the process, I hit pretty much every bump that I could getting through that whole thing. I accidentally deleted some of the footage. It like day of, I was like,
oh gosh.
Yeah. So some of those things of just like, I just had, but they loved it. I was, all things considered, I was really proud of what it turned out to be. But it was hard. It was really tough. That first one, because like I said, you're just figuring out how to do it and not only how to do it, but how I do it. Right.
Not how this person on Instagram does it, YouTube does it, but how does I, Sam, do it with my vision, my business, my creativity? Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And that's still ever evolving. Like I'm still like diving deeper into like what really a lot of it is just like self-reflection. Like what is my why? And that's probably the biggest thing that I've learned over the course of the past few years of doing this is just like really understanding your why for business, and for me in video, like understanding the like one core idea of the video. Everything kind of branches out from there. The first one was tough, and cool that it went the way it did. Everything was really positive. Really enjoyed the experience, but I wasn't like a lot of videographers that I hear chatting. I did one and I was hooked. I'm like, it was fun, but it was hard. The actual wedding day was really tough because you're on your feet and you're on all day, and you're kind of just going with the chaos of the day a little bit.
You're a one-man crew at this point.
Just me, yeah. I'm running around with a camera, and photographers and videographers often work together on the wedding day to just make everything flow. And in photo, you get into some of the weeds of like photo is a little bit different than video. Like what looks good in a picture doesn't always look good in a video. And so over the past few years, just like kind of identifying those pain points and how to cut them out has been so good. Like meeting with the photographer beforehand to just say like, hey, like video communicating that same point. Like video doesn't always, what photo needs doesn't always work for video. Like, but what works for video pretty much always works for photo.
Gotcha.
So there's some of those like niche business things that I've been working through. But yeah, the first one I didn't just like fall in love. I wasn't like, oh, what glory and majesty is this beautiful union.
Yeah. Now, like, so you didn't have this instant fall in love scenario. Did that come after you published your content to your clients, or did that come when you got paid and then you'd process how much you made per hour, or like
it wasn't much?
Because I've done some, I've done some photo shoots, done both on the client side and the host, like guest side, and you start doing the math, and you're like, if they spent 40 hours on this content, I know what I'm paying them, and if they spent 40, they're making $13 an hour,
right?
Like, is it worth it? Is it like, and so in my conversations with some people who I've encountered in many different spaces, it's like that first client, kind of that point where people say, okay, this is just going to be a hobby, or no, I could make this a business, because that first paycheck for effort, or either when you think it's really, really good, or even if you don't think it's that good, like running those numbers, and personally, I'm more of a numbers guy. So I'm like, I'm writing down how many seconds it took to do that piece, and I'm like, okay, that means I made this much, per hour, and to me, that's like, dude, I could make so much more doing something.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so I'm really curious, like, what kept you in the game, like mindset wise, that said, okay, this is worth my time, this is worth, or I have a bigger vision than what I'm currently getting.
I think it was a commit. It was a labor of love,
Okay. Okay.
in terms love in the commitment sense. Like I knew that this is, like I said, from high school. This is what I wanted to do, and I wanted to see it out, and I wanted to get where I wanted to go.
Mhm.
Um, I'm less of a numbers guy, so I think
Mhm.
that, but I've become more of a numbers guy because if not, not good. And so I I think what kept me in was the just interactions that I had with couples.
Okay.
I think that meeting with them and making sure that they feel comfortable and creating really an heirloom. That's the thing that has really struck me recently, is like the thing that I'm working with them to create is going to last as long. We can just pretty much say forever, right? Like as long as
Yeah.
we have electricity and some sort of storage, like
Right.
we're gonna have these moments that, um, you know.
Mhm.
And so I think that when I saw the value in that, I wanted to stick around and see it through. I think because it started off as kind of like a shallow thing and turned into just like, this is just what I want.
Right.
It's more just been about commitment. It's been less about the like just thrill and emotion of it. Really just want to like, I want to create things that matter, mean something to family, to a group of people. And so that's what I'm still constantly trying to hone in on and learn more about more effectively.
That your measure of success is if your client treasures the art form.
You mean like the response?
Like if you say, creating a legacy piece, creating something they're going to have forever.
Right.
Like this moment in their time, hopefully, is a singular moment,
Right.
and that they only need you once.
Right.
And like you are creating a piece that you're pouring heart, soul, emotion into, and be like, man, they're going to be sharing this with their children, and maybe then the grandchildren. Like, oh my gosh, like this is important. They just look at it and go like, oh, those are nice.
Yeah.
Um, are you deriving a sense of success for your art form from their response, or from the quality work that that you produced, or like how are you getting that affirmation that keeps you going?
I wouldn't say that it's based on response, because usually, well, 50% of the time it's, oh, we love it. And then that's kind of it.
Awesome.
Other times it's like, wow, this is like a huge thing. We can't thank you enough. And, so like, I think it's less based on that. And that does feel really good to
Mhm.
have someone affirm like this thing that you put yourself into, right?
Note for all those who are about to get married: love on your videographer and your photographer.
That's right. That's
A
right.
lot.
That's right. Words of affirmation go a long way.
The leather, the light and the contrast and the way you did the background. Oh my gosh, the editing!
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So those things are obviously lovely, and I love hearing them, and I love reviews. But I think for me, it's more out of a place of knowing that this thing is going to be valuable in the future.
Okay.
So I think I thrive from the interaction with people and positive interactions, but it's less of to satisfy like my need for more of I like just talking with people and getting to know and seeing and understanding people. Um, but the reward is for me knowing that I created something that their grandkids are going to see. Like I want the person that they see in the video to be similar to who they see in the future. And obviously, people change, but I want them to be able to at least. I want to do my best to represent them well.
Hmm. I got you. If you don't mind, I'm going to shift a little bit from the narrative of how you got here in your process to like, I want to talk about your business, your like real business. And what's your studio called again?
Everlast Film Co.
Everlast Film Co. How'd you come up with that name?
I wish I had something deep, but it sounded cooler than Samuel Murphy video.
Legitimate enough. I'm going to ask that question of many people.
Yeah.
How'd you come up with your name? Dude, I put it in AI and I typed it out. It was like
Yeah.
this first one, or it was the only domain that was
yeah.
open, or,
Yeah,
whatever.
Yeah. Well, I actually picked it because it had a bunch of, like, for all the social media things, it said that it had it all.
It matters.
And then I got to Facebook.
No.
Oh, that was heartbreaking. So I've had to like get creative with it, but that's not the
Throw
point.
in a dash or a colon and you're fine.
Yeah, you just gotta make something.
But you said in 2022, you went full time.
Yep.
And so I want to focus in on one particular aspect of that is like, when did you know that it was the right time to jump from this being a part-time thing, because you were doing construction and a few other things at the time, to, no, I'm going to make the leap? Was it the amount of revenue that it was coming in? Was it the contracts that you were about to get? Was it that you had faith in yourself that I needed to cut off my safety line to just go full on in? Like, what was it that made you say, now's the time to jump?
Mm. Deciding was the hardest part.
Okay.
Deciding was really difficult to commit to a direction because there's risk and there's uncertainty and there's just, you don't know how things are going to play out.
And you're married at this point, and do you
Married,
have a kid at
we're-
this point?
So I went full time into I was began self-employment in January of 22. And we
Okay.
had our first son in February of 2022.
Awesome. What a great time.
So in my mind, my wife and I discussed it. We're like, it would be a lot harder to get used to the way of living now and then having the way we're living now, being employed, and then adding a kid. So one transition. And then doing another one when I quit, and then doing another one where I'm self-employed with a kid.
Mhm.
So in our minds, it was like, why not just do both transitions at one time rather than do two over the course of 6 months?
Okay.
Right. And I'm so thankful that we did because our son had a lung infection when he was born. And so we spent 3 weeks in the hospital. And so like if I had to go back and forth to work if I had to go back and forth to work in Clarksville, we were at Vanderbilt. So an hour commute every day or however that played out,
Right.
it would have been a lot harder. And so I'm really grateful that it played out that way. But I spent a long time figuring out when was the right time. And just considering, like, am I just doing this because I really looking at my motivation? I was praying a lot because I didn't want to make the wrong choice out of a place of I just want to be something, right? Or I want to some sort of selfish, honorable goal, right? I was fearful that I was just doing it to something, really.
So good. I'm so awesome. I finally made it.
Yeah, because it seemed like arrogant to me a little bit, like putting my family, because she was pregnant at the time, like putting my family at risk with. I did have work lined up, but it wasn't like guaranteed and all those things, and so I was working through that, like making the wrong decision, and then when I sought counsel from some other folks in my life and who like knew me and knew where I wanted to go, and they were like, man, it's just gotta go for it. Honestly, like it does not seem like you are motivated selfishly. Like if you were, I think the one question that kind of changed my mind was like, if I did it and it didn't work, what would I do? Would I go back to a job, and like how would I feel about that? And my answer was like, I would, but if I decided that this isn't it, and I just had to get a job, like I'd be okay getting it. Like that was a sign of like, it's not something that I'm death gripping to. Something else, it's okay because it doesn't. I'm more concerned about providing than I am about proving my worth or equal.
Yeah, it's less about identity and just more like, no, I really want this, and let's give it a try.
Right.
If not now, then when?
Right.
Right.
The earlier on you fail, the better, the more time you have to recover, you know? Yeah.
Tell me about it. Golly.
So making that leap was, it was tough, but when I did it, you just got to go all in. And because self-employment is much more holistic, you can't really just, it's much more difficult to just leave work at work.
Mhm.
So if you're worried about all this stuff at work, it's going to come home and it's going to affect your family, depending on
Right.
what, what your relationship status and all are like, it affects all of you. And so I think that if you can just commit to a direction and the people that are involved with you are, if you're all looking the same way, it's going to be a lot better and you got to be fully in.
So when you started, um, how did you structure or how did you decide to structure your business? Because when you look at Google
Yeah.
and you type in how to start a business, they're like, choose a business entity, and you're like, I don't even know what an entity is.
Right,
Like I've
right.
seen the movie. Like what? Like what is an entity?
Yeah.
And we've talked about a lot of this through the years, and so I feel like maybe just from time you have a bigger understanding of what are than maybe someone who's just starting. But um, even still, you have lots of options of starting a sole proprietorship or an LLC or an S corp or all these different whatever these things mean. They have to do with taxes, I think. They have to do with protection, I think. From protecting from who or
Right,
from what?
right,
We don't
right,
know.
right.
But
Right.
how did you come to? You said at the beginning of the show, like you're an LLC. How did you decide to do that?
It honestly just seemed the most straightforward to me
Okay.
because I don't plan, like at the moment, I don't plan to have any employees.
Okay.
I really want to just keep things as minimal and simple as possible. So forming an LLC just provided a little bit of protection. And so, like I was saying earlier, I'm not really the most like just driven businessman, and so like I learned enough about this formation tactic enough to get like what I need to, and then I kind of moved on. So
Okay.
I know that there is a lot of tax things, and there's a lot of choosing the certain entity can
Mhm.
provide you a lot of different resources or tactics to solve problems
Right.
that you have. But for me, like it's pretty straightforward. And so,
And a lot of that's revenue driven. And so, like you said, if you don't plan on having employees and if you don't plan on, if you're a $1 million revenue business, like there's a lot of things that you don't have to worry about, which is kind of nice.
Mhm.
And so that side hustle or micro business or any of those types of things, like there's I recommend to anybody having an LLC just for whatever. Like, even owning any sort of real estate property in an LLC, or if you're going to do a side hustle or something, it does give you some barrier if you operate as an LLC, because like the point of the LLC is to provide some legal separation you and your company. So when I make contracts, I'm not signing as Jonathan, I'm signing as O of so and so LLC.
Right.
And so if they come and sue me, if they come and have an issue, they come after my business and not me personally.
Right.
So that the castle is always okay. How did you decide, like, if you Google LLCs,
Mm-hmm.
there's 10,000 companies that you could even go with. Like, how did you hone into, like, just what you were going to do in LLC and business registration and EINs and, like, agents? You need to have a legal agent and all this other crap that nobody even talks about.
Yeah.
But, like, you have to have if you're going to be an LLC, because
Right.
you have to do a yearly report, and then you file your taxes with your EIN, and then all this other da-da-da-da-da. Like, how'd you figure that out?
Hope and a prayer.
Hoping a prayer that IRS doesn't come after you, or
well, okay, yeah. I mean, yes, but so I decided like the LLC is the direction I wanted to move. Right?
Okay.
So I just started figuring out what I needed, and there's a lot of different platforms, yeah, that will kind of keep things organized for you, and
Right.
you can like basically just have one home for all that.
Right.
So I think I just went with the one that made most sense to me. I think it's Zendesk. Or something
Yep.
like that, yeah. Yep. So, so I went through them, and they kind of just like lined out what I needed to do, and
Articles of incorporation and all this good stuff.
even to this day, I'm like, I think I did everything right.
Haven't been
I haven't
audited.
been audited.
Haven't been sued.
I haven't been sued, but there's always that question of like, oh, if I make a bunch more money one year out of nowhere, am I at risk?
Mm,
And
mm.
so that's something that I am seeking out this year is just to like really formalize and make sure I have all my boxes checked. Use to just make sure that
Awesome. Awesome.
everything is where it needs to be and someone knows my history.
Mhm.
I think I had another videographer friend of mine tell me that he, one year, for the year he got married, $40,000 from the IRS or something like that, and it's because his wife, something I think that his in-laws claimed his wife as a dependent or something like that, and
Gosh.
so it was some sort of craziness like that he was like, I have no idea what the crap I'm gonna do. Like, what do I do? But luckily, he had the accountant for several years,
Mhm.
and so in his mind, like, say I have this accountant for 10 years and I pay him $400 a year to take care of everything and know where I'm at and what I'm doing. That $4,000 saved me $40,000. You
Mhm.
know what I mean?
Definitely.
Um,
Yep.
so I think that that's probably one of the things that has alleviated so much for me is just having a person who knows all my stuff and can help me if I get into a weird finance situation.
You have an accountant. Do you have a bookkeeper or an attorney or a banker or HR or any of those people?
Negative ghostwriter.
Okay. Okay.
QuickBooks.
It's a QuickBooks, so you
QuickBooks,
operate
yeah.
off of QuickBooks.
Mm-hmm.
And then you do every other function by yourself.
That's right.
You operate your own insurance, you operate your own banking, you operate your own legal and okay, okay.
Yep. Legal is the next one that is on the to do as well. Is just really making, or I use a CRM
Okay.
that has a lot of preloaded contracts and things. So, for as far as general provisions go, I'm covered. And luckily, like wedding videography, it's relatively low risk. Like people kind of know what to expect. And so as long as you have insurance and you don't somebody or someone doesn't hit your equipment, and I run a pretty minimal setup, then things are pretty much okay. So
Okay.
that is an area that I would like to just get it, having a guy, a lawyer that very similar to the accountant, just kind of knows my stuff, knows
Right.
what I'm doing.
Right.
But honestly, just I've kind of operated as possible the last 2 years. Just first 2 years have been hard, just because you're in the same way that first wedding film was hard. The first 2 years have been difficult because I'm realizing all the things I don't know. I'm realizing all the things that not only don't know about business, but I don't know about myself.
Mm.
So like big thing that I realized, I really care what other people think. That drives a lot of
Oof.
what I do.
Well, you and me both.
I really care like about I care more about
Please subscribe to this channel.
Don't forget to smash that like button.
I care what people think.
Dang it. I check every night. I check every afternoon.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. But that's a big driver for me. So like for some people it's money, or it's really money's a big one. But for me it's knowing that I did a good job. So I provided something well and people recognize that I provided something well. But that has put me in a state of analysis to paralysis, or paralysis of analysis, is because I'm trying to do everything so perfectly that it's now putting me in a place where I'm having to work harder because of the taking too much time to do certain things, and that's taking away from my overall revenue, right? And so
Time is your money, right?
It
If you're a
is.
single individual, every minute that I am spending on marketing, every minute I'm spending on entity or doing my banking or my accounting is like I'm not out there producing product or service, and so therefore income's not. It
Right.
all relies on me.
Right.
So I've seen that in myself and with other people. Is like one of the biggest limitations for business is fear of the unknown, or fear that there aren't the appropriate resources, or I won't figure it out, or and so it's like my experience with people has been that faster we can admit that I don't know how to do something, and I'm going to ask somebody a question of how to do it correctly, the faster I can move on past that point because it's always going to be there's always another Google search that'll tell you how to do it better.
Right.
And if you're constantly looking like, how do I do this better, or what are the potential issues here, then I'm going to spend my whole time focusing on fear
Yep.
and not on my business. And that's not profitable, it's not productive, and it keeps me in a very negative cycle.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I'm rereading a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yep. Classic. Robert Kiyosaki.
Yep. Yep. And one thing that I just read, you need to learn, if you want to make money, you need to learn how you respond to failure, and you need to learn how to turn that failure into a rallying cry. And so instead of looking at failure as a thing that defines me, like as an identity thing, right? I'm gonna look, instead of looking at it like that, because then it becomes, oh, poor me, I can't do this, what's wrong? I need to look at it and be like, yeah, I messed up, or I didn't see that coming, and so now I've just got to figure it out. You've got to like not take it to heart as quickly. Like looking at failures as an opportunity to succeed, as an opportunity to learn how to succeed, is a way better outlook to have.
So you formed your entity, and then did you have a bunch of equipment on hand, or did you have to go and buy equipment? Did you have an initial capital investment? Like, how did you get started in this? You rent your equipment? Like, how does a videographer, how does a photographer, how do they get started your industry? Like, do you need to own all of your stuff? Do you need to invest $10,000? Do you need $100,000? Like, what does it take, and what did it take for you to get started?
Yeah. So for equipment, I just accumulated over time.
Okay.
My first camera, my parents bought me in high school, and then I kind of just started growing from there and realized, I mean, most cameras nowadays will do majority of what most people need. Mm-hmm. It's when you're doing specific things and learning the ins and outs of how you work that you select different cameras. So I recently just bought one that was a good chunk in it, and it hurt. It hurt, but it's an investment. I was having problems with overheating my other camera, and so I bought this one, and it solves all those problems. It looks good. It's rated for Netflix, so it's got room to grow.
That's all we want, rated for Netflix.
Right. But yeah, so I just accumulated things over time. Depending on, it's so just dependent on like what type of things in my niche. And so, if you're a painter, depending on what type of paintings that you like to do, you're gonna have different tools. So you can spend $100,000. I know of guys who have done that, and there's a high ceiling, but you can also spend very little. I know of videographers who just film everything on their iPhone and produce like good work, like it looks good. And so for me, I bought a camera that could shoot 4K and had body image stabilization and a handful of just kind of like tools that made it look how I wanted to. And then some audio gear to make sure you could hear everything.
Right.
And then video editing software. Computer was a really big one. I had the same computer from same time I got the camera, actually. My first camera, sorry. I had that same computer up until my second year, up until the end of 2022. It was 10 years old.
You can't render, you can't make money.
So that investment was difficult. The $2,500 or whatever it was hard, but it paid for itself really quick.
Okay, cool. So you investment wise, somewhere between $1,000 iPhone and $100,000.
Yeah.
And then you needed a computer and camera equipment, maybe some lighting, some audio gear and stuff like that to get started.
Right.
And then you just started going out and marketing and selling, and like, how did you get your name out there initially?
Man, word of mouth is the biggest way I get clients.
What does that mean?
Word of mouth.
People say it all the time. What does that mean?
For me, it looks a lot like referrals. So I'd start with, my church community, really push my name out there.
Okay.
People were like, yeah, you can take our photos or our video.
Did you do a lot of free work?
Did a lot of free work at first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be the first thing that I'd recommend. And that was what was so appealing about the photo video world is you just have to show that you can do the work, and then you can start charging. right?
Okay.
And so if you find the right people, like you're going to get work, or you're going to be able to have opportunities to create things. So I would just shoot and just make things that I wanted to make. And that's kind of just how it grew. Is if you can just show that you can do it. Yeah. So word of mouth, right now, most of my business comes from referrals from other vendors.
Okay.
And so I'm not a big social media guy. It's important and I get it.
What?
But I think I'm just like kind of a pretentious artist that doesn't want to I don't want to create quantity over quality. I would rather do quality over quantity. Yeah. And so social media is important, and I'm still gonna do that to the best of my ability. But most people think that Instagram is probably like the number one way to like just put your work out there and gain clients. But so if that's what most people do, this year I've actually decided to pivot more into working with vendors, because like I was saying earlier, I'm much more like I'd rather have a conversation with somebody, relational, and get to know them, so I can in quality over quantity in terms of like talking with 10 vendors. If they all recommend 2 couples to me a year, I'm booked, right? And so that seems a lot more appealing to me.
Do you have a marketing budget, or do you just like your bread and butter is referral?
I do
Facebook ads, yellow pages. I don't know what people do these days.
Yellow pages, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. The billboard signs with your face on it.
Right. Well, there's a lot of different ways that you can put your feelers out to like connect with people, right? Instagram is kind of like the main one that leads people to my website. Okay. The website is the landing page where you have all your information, you have your what and all those things. Then from website, I'm going to focus mainly on like Instagram, just because I feel like that's where my ideal client is hanging out the most. Okay. There's other things I'm dabbling in, like Pinterest is one, because content lasts so much longer, or it stays green a lot longer than it does on TikTok or Facebook or Instagram. So because Pinterest is more of a search engine, for me, I'll make small videos, or I'll take frames from and post it and tag it. It's this wedding venue, and then that will lead them to my website.
Gotcha. Yeah, totally.
So like a quality over quantity there again. I'd rather do the minimal amount of work and get the most return. And so Facebook is another place that I'll probably just mirror what I post on Instagram.
Okay.
I know that Gary Vee recommends posting like 5 videos a day on all of the different ones. And
Gary Vee recommends a lot of things.
Oh man,
if you're not a machine, it's really hard.
Right. Or if you have kids or a family,
or a life.
Yeah.
I love Gary Vee.
Yeah.
I think he's a fantastic business person.
Oh, dude, incredible.
Wow.
I'm not built that way.
No,
and I think that's the biggest thing, is just knowing how you're wired. Yeah, it is.
I think the majority of people that we see on social media platforms, they're a particular brand of particular niche of business people that are obsessive people. And they almost convey a message that if you are not obsessive, like this is your entire life, this is what you breathe, this is what you eat, this is what you do, like you're not going to be successful.
Right.
And it all comes down to is like, what is the measure of success and what am I actually going towards?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the vision for my experience, a lot of people is not $30 million and this big a mansion, travel all over the world, and
right,
whatever.
The 1%.
Exactly. It's usually not. It's usually I want to provide enough for my family and to go on vacation a couple or every now and again, like whatever.
Right.
It's a lot smaller of a number, and it's a lot more of a relaxed lifestyle than what is portrayed generally on social media. The common business is far less intimidating than the idyllic or Andrew Tate business, or
right,
the Dave Ramsey business, or the Alex Hormozy. Is like the guys that you look at and you're just like, well, I'm not driving a Bugatti, so therefore I'm dirt.
Right.
Like I don't know. Like if I drive a new Kia, am I good? Like did I make it? Like I don't know.
Right.
And so that comparative narrative, or that narrative that you have to be of this particular mindset, obsessive, or to me is a unfortunate display of the modern business world, because I don't think it's accurate for the majority of people. So, in your vision, you have said that I want to create a business for me, but does that vision include ever hiring employees, or have you ever hired a 1099, or how have you navigated the whole idea of growth and employees?
Mm. I have utilized a couple of other creative guys that I know to kind of just help fill in as hands on a wedding day for especially like ceremonies. If I do like a full documentation, it's really hard to be everywhere at once. I don't know
Right.
if you've ever tried it, but it's impossible.
I've not. I've been asked to, and I was like, no way.
You were wise. You were wise.
Yeah.
And
I
so
was just looking at the dollar, and they were looking to pay me like $500. Like, no. Like, you're gonna ask me to put in 200 hours worth of work for 50 cents? Like, I'm just like, I love you.
yeah,
No.
no, I'll help you find somebody.
Hey, absolutely. Here's my friend Sam.
Oh, I love you too.
Hey, you're mature enough to say no. Come on.
But scaling is another thing that this year as I've looked to where I'm going to go. Scaling has kind of been a question of what identifying goals, but then scaling. Is this going to help me get there? Because I only have 20 weddings in me a year max, right? To live the way that I want to live. At if everybody picks my lowest package, I'm not quite making enough to live how I want to live, really. Okay. And so, over time, you can start to raise your prices like every year. Try to raise a good 500, probably at minimum $500 every year. Just boost that bottom line. But over time, like I was saying, if you have good business practices and are growing, and then 20 weddings. I mean, I know of people I've heard of people who will charge $100,000 for just the wedding video. Like that's the top end of what I've heard is possible. So like,
Golly.
I know like there's a lot of work and there's a lot of craftsmanship that goes into just getting into that position. But
So don't think that you can just pick up your iPhone and make $100,000 a year per a video for a wedding.
right, right.
Holy moly.
That blew my mind, and I was like, okay, my $3,000 is not that scary, But so scaling wise, what I've thought about doing is like having two separate companies. One that I would head up more and have as a luxury expensive, and I take less a year.
Okay.
And a separate wedding film entity creates kind of more mid-range market videos that don't interest me to make because they're a little more generic, so to speak.
Right.
But if people really like the style and that's what they want, awesome. But then so have a team that runs that, and then I take a percentage. Time leveraged, really.
Yeah. Okay.
Some
Yeah.
leveraged income, and then I also have my main more luxury work.
Yeah, because I mean, the thought, or the idea to me would be like, at the end of the day, you still have a baseline of what you are as a company or as an individual, and there's the ideal of I only spend my time working on these types of projects. The 10% of like I love the creativity, the time. Like, this is a labor of love more than it is about the dollars, even though the dollars are very lucrative.
Sure.
Like, but then at the end of the day, it's like you're going to be in your slow season, and then you're like, and I still need to make payroll or rent or lights need to stay on, or I need a bunch of new SD cards because we're just in that cycle, and it just costs to operate a business. I mean, it makes total sense. It's like the car wash models. Like, you can show up and get a car wash for $10. It's kind of just going to spit water on you. And then you can go spend $30 and actually get a real one.
Right.
So it's like, did I go to the car wash? Well, I can say the same thing. Yeah, I got a wedding video.
Right.
But one's of like attention, detail, quality, and the other one is just like kind of just like a spit as you go by.
Yeah.
Not to compare your photos to spit, but it's the only analogy I
Wow.
can come up with real fast.
Good thing this is the first one.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
the first podcast.
Oh, there we go. We're learning. We're growing. I'm
Yeah.
learning. This is all part of the conversation.
No, but that's totally true. That's totally true. Yeah. Yeah.
So where did you start in 2022, if you don't mind me asking? Like where did you start revenue wise? Where you are today, and where do you hope to be in 5 years? Do you have like that of like where you started, where you are, and where you're going? Is that how you think about business?
I think that I'm to a fault less. I'm less a numbers guy.
Okay.
I'm more about creating the thing. So I've identified that as a weakness of mine. Like I'm less concerned about the numbers and making the money because that seems, in my mind, that seems more selfish, right? Which is untrue, but
Right.
because I don't want to be like money hungry, like it has a bad look, right? And so I've become that almost to a fault. And so my numbers for the first year, I want to say, oh, I do need to preface. My wife was working at the time when I quit my job and became self-employed.
Okay. So
And
you guys
so-
had a little bit of a foundation as well.
So she was the breadwinner for a time.
Okay.
And then our son was born. We both took off. She got maternity leave and all that stuff. And then once she went back to work, I stayed home with our kiddo in order for her to work and for not having to pay for daycare.
Right.
So
It's not just about income, it's about expenses.
Right. So I would watch him, and he'd only sleep, 4 to 5 hours a day.
Yeah.
So that was when I would do my work most of the time, and it got to the biggest reason for. So I was really doing like part time the first year.
Okay.
And so that meant my time invested was lower, and so I still did. I want to say 30 something. I want to say I did about 34 that year.
That's awesome.
Yeah, which was for me was a huge win. As
Yeah.
part time, maybe a little over part time.
I'm
and
just trying to
so-
think of how many people have. I'm gonna put it on their quotes under side hustle.
Yeah,
But like you can put 20, 30 hours in a week, which people do on a part-time job all the time. People do that with Uber Eats.
Right.
It's like, can you make 25, 30 grand
Right.
doing that? Like that's a win.
Yeah.
In my book.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
yeah. So I was really pumped, really proud of that. Last year I did 40. I think 45. I think.
Okay.
So that was also partial. So she went back to work a year later. So it was like March. So I basically did 40K or 45K in like March to 9 months.
Okay.
9 months. This year I hit about the same.
Okay.
And mostly that was just due to, I think, poor planning on my part for the slow season. I did have a couple of contracts that didn't work out the way I thought. And so like, there was probably another 5 to 7 that I was planning on that didn't go.
Okay.
And so,
The way of business. Sometimes contracts don't work out.
just how it goes sometimes. And so, so that was tough because it's like, I should have planned better, right? I should have projected more. I shouldn't have bought the camera that I did. Like there's all these things that you start to like nitpick at, and you're like,
right.
man. But going back to, you need to turn your failure into a rallying cry.
Mhm.
That's the kind of shift I've made. I'm like, okay, I really realize that I'm crappy at paying attention to numbers. And I identified the root of that, which is like, I don't want to be selfish or be a bad person because I care more about money than I do people. That's not true, because if I don't care about the money, I'm not really caring for the people.
Right.
Right. And
It's just different people.
Right.
Right.
right. So in my scenario, right. And so I'd really love to, the next 5 years, I think in the next 2 to 3 years, I'd like to hit 6 figures.
Okay.
That's kind of like really like 2 years, I'd like to hit 6 figures. And so I'm looking at ways to identify that in some of the commercial world, because the ceiling or like just the budget for projects is usually bigger there,
Right.
right? It's going to be,
Right.
10,000, 15,000 for a project. a more expensive wedding film in my area is like 5,000.
Right.
Right.
And I could even see the potential for, on a commercial front, like the potential to get more and more clients, referrals, and stuff like that. Because one thing I can identify in your industry, in your business, is you don't have repeat clients.
Mhm. Yep.
Like every single one of your wedding videos is a one off, which in a sense is a really, really cool opportunity because you can be genuinely creative every news.
Right.
But in the short, shortcoming side of things is it's extraordinarily hard to template anything. It's extremely hard to create a system. I mean, you can create a system on like how you shoot the wedding or like your tunnel for how you edit and all that other stuff. But how your client is going to interact with you, how you're going to interact with your client on when you know mother-in-law does this and when the drunk person does that and like the dynamics of the actual shoot you have zero control over, so that is brand new, exciting, but brand new every single time,
Yep.
which if you have to recreate, reiterate the system of your business every use, it will hinder you in your ability to expand. The businesses that are able to expand are the ones that are able to systems that are reproducible. Amazon, Walmart, Coca-Cola,
Right.
whatever. You have opinions about, whether they're good companies or bad companies. It doesn't matter. It's they've been able to obviously create a system, systematize every process as much as possible.
That is one thing that's so difficult about working in any like creative industry or creative
Hmm.
field is like your value comes from like what you can do for the individual,
Right.
less about the service or less about the like thing that you're like doing for them. So one thing that because I've been considering that a good bit lately is
Yeah.
like how do I basically expand the shelf life of this client for my business, right? Like
Mhm.
photographers have a little bit easier of a time doing this because it's like, the couple gets married or
Right.
you do engagement pictures. So beforehand, or even before that, you do family pictures with the head family, and then you take pictures for all the kids' graduation,
Hmm.
graduation. Then you kind of go down the line, right? Graduation.
Yep.
What's the next one? Engagement, wedding, maternity, family. You repeat the process. So
Holiday,
all
birthday.
kinds of occasions, yeah.
Yeah.
So I've been considering like how do I implement video? How do I
Mhm.
kind of take that from a video approach? You know,
Yeah.
so like
Totally.
doing these like smaller sessions, like in home, like coming at it from the perspective of this is an heirloom, right? So one thing that I've been thinking about recently is like for my family, grandparents aren't going to be around forever, right? So like my kids are really young. They'll probably have a okay memory of or my first two will have an okay memory of like who their great grandparents are.
Hmm.
But like if we have more, like they're not gonna know who they are. Really.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
so like what is so beautiful about videos, like you can get a good essence of like who a person is and can convey who they are, what they're about, in 5 to 8 minutes,
Mm.
right?
That's so good.
So going with that idea of an heirloom, like, could I branch out and like offer a grandparent video type of thing, right? So more like a documentary about a person,
Mm.
right?
That's good, man.
And so then so that's the creative side, business side, like people later on in life usually have a little bit more money and are willing to more money, less energy, more time. And so they're willing to invest in things that cost a little bit more if it means like they're going to get a more sentimental product out of it. So like they're going to that daughter bought this documentary for her parents to be able to show grandkids and so on.
Yeah.
So and then it becomes a little bit different animal than a wedding, but um, totally doable, totally meaningful. And so that's a product that I'm considering exploring this year.
I can totally see, just as you're talking, a collaboration between you and an estate planning attorney. That you have a product that, as they are creating their portfolio, their investments, their, set these legal things to happen upon their passing, there could be a package in there that's like legacy video or legacy wisdom or something
Mhm.
like that. Where you have a product or a service that is systematized, um, and all this other stuff that you could then offer in collaboration with some sort of estate planning attorney. Thinking of like
Other vendors,
they are
right?
selling legacy,
Right.
you are selling visual legacy,
Hmm.
and it sounds like there could be a collaboration way, and that can create that other stream of baseline that's like, oh, this is something that I can kind of automate because I can create a system that then produces, whether it be a selfie video and you create an auto upload in an online cloud, and then it's part of their portfolio, their
Right.
legacy portfolio, curate that and things like that. That's a really cool idea.
Yeah.
Of
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, that's something I'm hoping to kind of explore this year. I'll probably like do a dry test of just creating it for my own family. That's probably where I'll start, and then see where that leads.
if you were going to encounter another am in their young teens who has this vision or this idea of, oh man, I think I would like to possibly maybe become a photographer, videographer. Like, do you have advice? Do you have pieces of wisdoms? Do you have pinnacle moments that very very important to you and say, okay, this pushed me towards it, and this pushed me away
I'd say to myself, my younger self, right?
from it?
Um, just do it imperfectly.
Okay.
So I saying earlier about how much I just like care about what other people think, and that's a lot tied to like what I create.
Mhm.
Like I want to create things that are, for lack of a better term, but perfection doesn't exist, and more important that you are, in a business sense, it's more important that you're creating something that is good and looks fine, and then sharing that for other people to see. It's just more about putting in the reps and less about making every single thing perfect. So from a creative perspective, I'd say that. From a business perspective, I would say just really be genuine with people. I think that if you focus on connecting and relating with people, the business things will kind of fall in line in terms of work coming in, right? So if you focus on connection, focus on the people, I think the money will come in. And this is kind of, I'm gonna keep it to those two, but those are the two things that I would say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good deal. So if people want to enlist your services to find out who you are, where are you, or where are you at? Where can people find you? Is the best way to be in contact with you? Where's your plug?
Yeah. Go to everlastfilm.co, and just kind of take a look at the work there. I I think on social media, I'm pretty much at everlastfilm.co on everything,
Okay.
most everything.
And do you have a region of business that you like to operate in? Are you national? Are you international? Where are you operating?
Wherever the love is, man.
Wherever the love is.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
So if the love is there and the dollars are present, then Legacy Co. They'll come out and service you.
Awesome.
Sam, thank you so much for coming out on the show today. I'm excited to see where you are in that 2 year, 5 year. We'll have to have you back again and say, okay, did you bring on employees? Did
Yeah.
you not bring employees?
Yeah.
Where's the legacy component? Where's the side, hustle, the mainstream of passive income? And like, have you been able to grow to a 6-figure company and take it on from there? So, dude, thank you so much for coming on today.
It's an honor. Thank you for having me.